learning game design patterns, GG infinite runner, open up code here. And if I remember correctly, we had created the button, we had gotten it down, and we were still needing to set up that button to, well, actually do something when we click it. Let's see what we wrote in here. Well, okay, so create the button to rebind the keys. I think we have that done. Now we need to actually wire it up so that when we click it, the key is rebound. There's probably a significant amount. This is probably going to be the entire stream to do this for these two things. But then once we get that, we'll be all done. I think I may have to turn the gain on my mic down. It's getting warmer and warmer and warmer every day, which is causing us to also, your camera can I think be over there. I don't know why that moved like that. Okay, so I want mic. Let's take a look at your filters. I want, I guess, gain, and to turn you down. I think this might be better. Let me know. Let me know how it's sounding. I don't think it's picking up quite as much of the fan noise and then the outside noise coming from the window now. But all right, let's play this. See where we're at. Okay, so it's just the normal game. Can jump like normal. If we press escape, we now have this rebind jump key, and when I click it, we get the rebind space button clicked. So it can be aware that it's being clicked on. I can click near it, and that doesn't work. Okay, so that's good. So we're gonna want the rebind jump key, and we're also gonna want the rebind restart game button. And so we can just put them next to each other. Obviously, if we really wanted to be very, I don't know, good about it, I don't know. To be proper, we'd also move the button down to be next to jump and restart game. I might end up doing that off stream because I don't necessarily think it's interesting to like watch me fuddle around with numbers and do the math to figure out exactly where I want to put it. I also want to like potentially line these up, but again, this application is more about practice with like the actual commands to do the rebinding as opposed to the graphical interface of figuring that out. All right. So with that, let's see what's the first part of that we're going to work on. Oh, did I turn off? I did. So you're no longer running, so we won't get any of those messages anymore. The chatbot is running and working. All right, cool. Things are good. All right, allow rebinding the jump key. So when we click rebind jump key, we need to know that we're rebinding a jump key. If we go into our main library here, that's not the main library. This is the main library. Under update, when we're in this help screen, we're able to tell, okay, is the space button being clicked? And so if it is being clicked, this is where we could set and tell the we can now tell the input handler we're now rebinding. Like we're rebinding it, and we're specifically what we're rebinding. Then it can be listening for the next keyboard shortcut, which we happen to know is down here. So on key down event, we have this function. So it's currently only looking for escape. We could have it be looking if we're in a rebinding state. Then whatever key code it is, which here's the key code that's pressed down, whatever that key code is, pass into rebinding. So we need like a start rebinding function on the input handler, and then we're gonna need actually the rebind method on the input handler, and then sort of, yeah, that we're no longer binding. Okay, so if you go to our input handler, the idea is that we're going to click on rebind space, and then it's gonna say, okay, we're now rebinding the space key. All right. So let's we can make it, we could make it an option, but we could also just have the are we rebinding anything? Because I could just say, okay, are we rebinding space, and this is a bool. That's one way that we can handle this. Another way is an enum. So what are we rebinding? That actually sounds a little bit better for us. So let's see. Or each of these jump commands could be an option, and therefore we can set it to none when it's being rebound. I don't like that quite as much. I think I would rather have like, what are we rebinding? So rebinding essentially is going to be an enum. I could put the enum in here, or we could have another file for it. That might be best to have the other file for it, because I'm going to need to access that in the library unless I return it from in here. It could be a private enum just for this. Let's experiment with that. If I have a private enum rebinding, so our choices are not like nothing, jump, and reset game. So then rebinding is going to be of type rebinding here. Rebinding, and we're going to start with nothing. So by default, we're not rebinding anything. Now I can create a lens into this. Are we rebinding? But we can also say that we are rebinding something. So the first thing that's going to happen is over in this library, we click the rebinding button. That happens right here. If we click the rebinding button, we want to start rebinding the space key, but only also if we're not rebinding anything else. So I guess that's the first thing. Are we currently rebinding? So pub function is binding. And this is going to be a Boolean. All right, so we pretty much want to just match is rebinding null, essentially, at that point. So if let, I think the way it works with a custom enum here is I can do rebinding nothing equals self.rebinding, and then it'll come into here if this is matched. So if let rebinding nothing equals self-rebinding, return true, else return false. And I think something that I've not added in here that I want to is on autosave, format on save. I apparently forgot to add that in. Ooh, and let's also set up the Twitch highlighter. So feel free to do bang line to highlight any line in the editor. All right, so we have is binding. So that allows us to come into the main library here. So if self-rebind, okay, so if the button is being clicked and self.input handler dot is binding, is that what I called it? Is binding. So I want to do not rebinding. I'm going to call this not binding. And so if true, okay, I'm going to make this be false. And you be true. That'll make it a little bit easier for me to not have like the not in here. So you'll be not binding. Okay, so if we've clicked the button and we're currently not in a binding state, then we want to go ahead and run this. What we want to run is go into a binding state for the space. So pub function start binding space. So this is something interesting because I can have start binding and pass it in the enum of what we're binding, or I can have this function start binding space, which then would allow me to just do mute self. I don't have to take anything else. We're just going to change it to that. I don't know what the best route to go here is. I don't necessarily want the library to have to know the implementation details of input handler, just to know that start binding space is something that it can do. Okay, so I have that. We're not going to return anything. We're going to say self.rebinding is now going to be equal to rebinding jump. And so I don't want to say space. We do want to say jump. So start binding jump sets binding to jump, and like that. So now let's use that. Start binding jump. So self.input handler dot start binding jump. Okay, so now we've started binding jump to a new key. At which point now we want this function down here, the onKeyCode event, we want it to begin listening for, well, basically on any key code. And I don't have to have it be escape. Although that would be very hilarious if I like allowed that. when this function runs, I can now check if we're in a rebinding state. Then I'm going to want to rebind the specific key that we're rebinding. And actually, it's not even tell rebinding. It's more of just say, hey, input handler, we're trying to rebind. So if we are, so I kind of want to do this twice, right? Pub function is rebinding. I don't know if it's a good idea, like a good or bad practice to have like this both negative and positive, so that way I can not have the bang. This will be a bool. Basically, this is going to be we want to return a not self dot not binding. I mean, that's kind of what this is. This one is a little bit easier to read, in my opinion, than that longer if statement. So is rebinding here. Okay, so this is escape key code to go into the different game states. Now, I don't necessarily want the escape key to be used for this. So if the key code is not escape, then can I do an else if here? If I do an else if, it's going to be self dot input handler dot is rebinding. Okay, so if it's not the escape key that we pressed and we're in the rebinding state, then we want to now call bind key. So pub function bind, like bind key. So here we can tell what we're rebinding, and we have the various jump, like the various commands. And they're just key codes. So this is going to take bind key, and then we also want a key code. And this is going to be type key code. And we probably want to match on what we're rebinding. So match on self dot rebinding. So we have rebinding. So the first arm, if we're doing jump, then we're going to say self dot jump command key code. We want to now set that equal to key code. If we are rebinding reset game, we want to now say self dot reset game key code equals key code. And if we're doing nothing, we kind of just want to do nothing. Like that. And at the end here, we'll semicolon because we're not trying to return anything. So now we're going to call bind key and pass it in the key. So self dot input handler dot bind key and pass it in the key code. And theoretically, now jump should be rebound. Let's find out. That was, I mean, I don't know, that's a lot of code we just wrote without testing it. So maybe everything will go horribly wrong. Maybe everything will be amazing and awesome and just work the first time. And that's before I even had the caffeinated tea. All right, so space jumps. If I hit escape, rebind jump. Now, there's no interface letting me know that I'm now in a rebinding state. Let's say I want to do A. So I hit that. Let's now escape out. It's still space. So that didn't quite work the way I wanted it to. So not quite what I was hoping for. Let's print out the I guess like the state of our rebinding, or maybe we want to print out what the key codes are. So in our draw, we have, I think, draw help screen here. So here, jump space. I want to turn this into a format. And this will allow me to say jumps. Instead of space, I want to put the key code. And then we're in format. So then this is going to be the key code for jump. Do I have access to that? I could public it. So I could say jump command key code, make this public. Same thing with the reset game key code. Then get access to it here. So self dot input handler dot jump command key code. We'll do the same thing with restart game. Self dot input handler dot reset game key code. So if I save that, virtual key code doesn't implement standard format display. Oh, the key code doesn't implement display. So I'm going to need some kind of other way. Wait, can I add that in here? Can I derive display? Or is that gonna freak that out? Cannot find macro display in the scope, so we're gonna use standard format, not debug, not display. Oh, that's interesting. That's not the display that I was expecting it to be caring about. Okay, when it events virtual key code doesn't implement standard format display, cannot be formatted with a default formatter. So let's see if I go to a key code in, let's go to the documentation. I wonder if I could get like the raw string off of that. Because I think it's a input keyboard key code. What methods do I have here? So we have copy. So we have an into. Type output, superset of, erased. Not as many sort of like functions or methods that I was expecting to be off of it. I wonder what to owned would do. I also wonder if there is a function for me to take the key code and like extract it out. Let's show the declaration. Okay, so it's a public enum key code. Well, okay, so I figured that it was an enum. I thought maybe there'd be like values associated with it, like the ASCII values, but it's not. So key code. I wonder if I can. Let's try into. Let's just see what happens if I like ask it to go into a string. So you are not going to work. Also, this is winit events virtual key code. Is that different than what I have? So winit event virtual key code, it's an option. I'm not necessarily seeing anything else that's in here that would help. There's still the same into any. Let's see what its declaration is. So a keyboard input, but this is a keyboard input. When it events virtual key code, this is not the same thing. So winit. So there's winit init, but I didn't see like a winit from the base. Yeah, interesting. Okay, there's this virtual key code here, option and virtual key code, which would be the actual key code. I wonder if I have to check to see if, there's a scan code, which is a U32. Do I have access to that? So keyboard. So my input handler, let's say when I'm binding, and I'm getting this key code in here, which we know a pub enum virtual key code. Ooh, so even though I'm getting it off of keyboard, okay, so it is a type virtual key code. Can I print line that? So can I start, will it allow me to debug the key code? So it won't let me turn this into a format. So let's undo these for right now. Okay, so if I save you, we're back to no errors. Let's run. Let's see what we get. Hit escape. Okay, so start rebinding, press A. I mean, we just get key code equals A. I mean, it also unfortunately gives me the line number of that code. It would be nice if I could somehow format it out of there, but it doesn't seem like it wants me to do that. This input handler, so debug key code. If I want to print line key pressed, can I do key code dot and there's no auto connect for us. Into? Will that work? No, it's very upset about that. Oh, I forgot a semicolon. Type annotations needed. Yeah, I suppose it would. Right, because I want to go into a generic type. How do I say? I know I can do a type on this one. Can I do a turbofish syntax on this? Like that. No, not there. You know what I probably could do is just do this in 2 lines. So let pressed key of type string equals key code dot into. Now you're yelling at me. The trait bound string convert from virtual key codes is not satisfied. Okay, so I suppose that makes sense. So the into, it has an into, but it doesn't have an into for a string. That means as won't work for string either. Inside of here, can I get the scan code off of it? Which is just a U32, so I don't need U. I don't want to type U. No field scan code on type when it events virtual key code. Right, because this is the keyboard input. And the virtual key code is an option virtual keyboard key code. But that's a keyboard input. In this function, key down, we have this key code here, We know it's a virtual key code, but it doesn't sound like we can figure out exactly what it is. Like, I can't necessarily convert it to be a string. I could, I guess, check all of the arms and then print those out. That seems really annoying. If I would have to like say, okay, every possible key combination that we want off of the keyboard, let's check that. I would rather be able to handle new keyboards as they come in, as key code supports them. I mean, but that's what we're checking up here. Key code escape. We're checking like if it's specifically the escape key. Let's see if we are rebinding. And maybe that debug. Let's see what a debug print statement for here looks like. Because if I do just question mark, we'll just take a look at the key code. Don't have a scan code coming in. We just have the key code. Let's take a look what you are. Key pressed A. I mean, that's not bad. That just tells us what the arm is. So I could, in this library here, we'll do our format and updates. Here it is. All right, so let's do our format. So instead of space, we're going to have question mark, and then we're going to have to do self.input handler dot the jump command key code, because okay, yeah, that should work. So this should give us exactly what we want then. No, not for loop, format. And then self.input handler dot reset game key code. So if I do this, they're both space. That makes sense. I actually saved, so it is exactly what we want it to be. If I rebind jump and then hit like, I don't know, something else, key pressed is K what I pressed, but it didn't change it here. Did I properly store that? So in the input handler, we bind the key. So I guess that's the next thing is, did we properly start rebinding? Start rebinding, jump, self-rebinding is rebinding jump. So if I don't do this, let's say I just do my print line here. What? Come on. rebinding jump 2, and then the key code. Don't need you. Save you. So I want to see, are we actually rebinding the jump? Start that. No. Okay, so when we click the button, we're not going into the rebinding phase. That's our first problem. So here in the main library, we want in our update, game state help. Okay, so if the mouse button is pressed on the button, get the mouse position. If we're being clicked and we're not binding, then let's do a little bit of a print line here. Rebinding jump button. My guess is this is not being called properly and that my logic in the if is incorrect. Yeah. Okay, so self the input handler not binding is not correct in this specific case. So not binding. If let rebinding nothing is self rebinding, which that's what it should be to begin with, yeah. Return false. Otherwise return true. Kind of want to like debug in here too. Because if I just do debug and our we are not rebinding. No, we are rebinding. Save view. We are rebinding. Okay, so we are rebinding, so false is getting returned. Not bind. Oh, wait. If we're binding nothing, then we are not rebinding. True. False. Okay. Dyslexize that. Now I can hit rebind jump, rebind the jump button. If I now hit A, rebind jump to A, that didn't work. We're getting this rebinding jump all over the place now. That's in this thing. So it didn't actually do the thing. Oh wait, because I didn't actually, I'm just recording it down. So now we're gonna do self dot jump command. Right, and we also need to set that we're no longer rebinding. So self command key code, our jump command key code is now going to be equal to the key code. After we match self-rebinding, we get the key code. Now we want to state that we're no longer in rebinding mode. So that's going to be self dot rebinding equals rebinding nothing. We're no longer binding. So if I say that, cargo run, hit here, let's rebind to A. Hey, jump is now A. And now I can jump with the A key. The spacebar obviously doesn't do anything for me, and I can jump. Ooh, okay, so super nice. Now we want to rebind the restart game if we want. So let's create another button, and we'll wire that up too. So at the beginning here, we have our rebind space button. We're going to want a rebind. It should not be called rebind space button. This needs to be called rebind jump button. And this is going to be rebind reset game button is a type button. All right, so we're going to create a new button. So button new. Let's put it just like underneath our other button. That'll make it pretty simple. So 200 over. Let's do like 400 down. So it'll be a little bit farther down. The text. So rebind jump. This is going to rebind. What would that be? Rebind. And then we want reset game. And then our context, question mark that, store it. Okay, that gives us that. We need to draw it out to the screen. And that's in our draw, not end game screen, but our help screen. So here's all of our draws. We're going to essentially self.rebind reset button dot draw, pass it in the context, question mark that, save. Okay, so that draws it to the screen. We need to wire it up. So an update, well, I guess let's make sure that we're actually drawing it to the screen and that it looks the way we want it to. All right, so here's rebind reset game button. Obviously, if I click on that, nothing happens. I'm also going to want some kind of message to, hey, we're rebinding. Like that's what's happening. And maybe that's something we want right here. Okay, so rebind reset game. And of course, those are all like nice things to have. I'm not too terribly concerned about implementing that for this specific game. Again, might be things that I do off screen. I don't know. Rebind reset game. So we want to now wire it up so we can click on it. So in update, so in help here, okay, so if our mouse button is pressed, if self rebind button is being clicked and we're not binding, do this. We kind of want an else if here too. Now, I wonder if a match would be better. Can we match? Or I wonder if it would be better to have an if on just the self input handler not binding. And then we match on what we're binding. That might be better. Let's try this. So if self dot input handler dot not binding. So if we're not binding, then we want to now match sorry, I think I accidentally nicked the microphone. Self Rebind Jump button is being clicked. Can we figure out what we're clicking on though? Not really, unfortunately. We could just do multiple if statements in here, which we might have to. I'm not super thrilled with it. Then this is like the third nested loop. There's definitely a refactor here that can happen that will make it a lot better. So self dot rebind jump button dot is being clicked, mouse position dot into. So if that's happening, then we want you to happen. So start binding jump, else if self dot, this is going to be our rebind reset game button is being clicked, mouse position dot into. This would also be where a loop would help, because then I don't have to have these else ifs, or at least the else if. I could maybe have one if. Okay, so now we're clicking on this, so we're going to do self dot input handler dot start binding. Ooh, so we don't have this implemented yet, and this other if else goes away. So now we need to start rebinding reset game. That comes back to the input handler. We have start rebinding jump. If I duplicate you, self rebinding equals rebinding. This is no longer jump. This is going to be reset game. Reset game. Self dot input handler dot start binding reset game. Okay, so that starts binding that. And then I think the rest of it just automatically works if I've coded it correctly. Let's find out. So we're going to come into commands. We can reset jump to A, and I can click this and reset this to like R. Oh, perfect. So now R, wait, let me finish the game. So let me die. and now R resets the game. And of course, it doesn't happen other times because our input handler is preventing that from happening. This is a problem. Restart game by pressing space. We should have it actually read from the input handler to know what restart game we need to press. So I think that is in our main library. So we have this game state, this is update. I think we have a draw game over screen. Yeah, draw end screen here. Restart game by pressing space. So we need to make this a format. So instead of space here, we're gonna have a debug mode print, and then we're gonna say self.input handler dot reset game command key code. And that will very nicely just automatically tell us which one we're going for. Now, instead of making those public, I could potentially make them make it a lens. If I were to make that a lens, and by lens I mean a function here that like gets what the key code is, and so it's going to return that key code sort of like debug format statement, like this, just the string, or it's going to return the string rebinding. Let's test that first. Let's rebind. So rebind reset game to like Q. We'll end the game. Okay, restart game by pressing Q. So that works. Hit Q, it actually does restart the game. Now, if I want to be able to say that I am rebinding, where is that? That is part of this draw help screen. We're just doing this self-input handler jump command key code. But of course, that's set to the key code until it's set to another key code. If I want to return that string or the word rebinding, then I need a lens. Okay, so let's do one lens per to begin with. So pub function get get jump key code. So a reference to self. I don't think we need any anything else coming in, and we're going to return a string. Well, so first things right off the bat, if we're rebinding, we can go ahead and return the string. So if this is going to have to be an if let rebinding jump. Okay, so if we're rebinding jump equals self dot rebinding, then we want to return just the string. So I'm going to do a static string right now, and then I'll do two owned at the end to convert it to a string. So this is going to be rebinding dot two owned, and just straight up return that. Otherwise, if we're not rebinding jump, Then I want to return format self dot what is it? Jump command key code. All right, so it's only yelling to me that I'm not using this function. So get jump key code can now be used here in the draw help screen. And I don't need this question mark anymore. Now I can just do self.input handler dot get jump key code like that. And that should work. So if I do this, we're going to come into key code. I start rebinding jump, and it switches to rebinding. Then I hit Q, and it switches to that. I start it again, hit Z. Hit Z again. If I rebind reset game, that doesn't do anything to jump. Okay, that is perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. So now we want the exact same thing for the reset game command. And I suppose this would be an argument for us making that enum public, because then, or not just public, like in a different module, then I could pass that in. Hey, which is the one that I'm trying to get at? Then I can have a single function as opposed to multiple of these functions. So pub function, let's get reset game key code self string if let rebinding reset game equals self dot rebinding. We're going to return rebinding got two owned. Otherwise, we're going to return the format self dot reset game command key code. Save this. Let's now go use our reset game key code. So it's in restart game. This is no longer debug mode. Get reset game key code is there. And then also on the end screen, so reset game by pressing. Instead of that, we will also do get reset game key code. Ooh, we have an error. What's our error? Cannot find string. I did not type that correctly. String. So if I hit this, rebind, okay, we're rebinding that. Which means now we can set this to S, this to R, because that makes sense. Escape out. We can still jump using R. We can end the game and restart game by pressing S, and that works. All right, that's exactly what we wanted. And I think that's a good stream today. So I'm gonna go ahead and push this code up. So able to rebind keys. Let's maybe before I do that fully, I will update these. Now, nice things to have. Maybe not in patterns here, but I guess I could do nice things to have. Put the rebind buttons in a place that makes sense. Let's have like display the rebinding buttons next to the commands they are rebinding. I think that makes a lot of sense there. But that being said, like the basics of the infinite runner, implementing command for it is done. So I'm gonna go ahead and save you, push you up. Oh, you didn't see that. Okay, commit am, sort of updated the README with nice things to have. Git push that. The code for this I have, and it's available via the chat command bang repo.